today without any problems. Last week we were having problems. We're here today at our Tuzer's local coffee shop. We're so happy to be back. We've been away for 2 weeks. The owner was actually gone on vacation. We missed her very much. So we need to sign. We're just sharing the Facebook Live on our private Facebook pages. So we're just getting our little technical stuff together. And we have all our kids,
4 and 5 today, right? Chapters 4 and 5. So if you guys really do have any questions while we are doing this, we really would love to hear from you. So put them in the comment section and everything, just so that we can talk through them, because chapter 5, like we were saying, is a real self-assessment kind of thing. So we would love to hear your thoughts on that. Kind of dive deep and discuss that a little bit more. So we can always do that on the live video, or we can do it on the private Facebook page. So make sure you join the private Facebook page also. And yeah, so there's just multiple ways you can join us, and we're excited. I want to know what the podcast is going to.
Yeah.
Tell us, we really want to hear positive, negative feedback, criticism. We're new. We're clearly not technologically, I can't even say the word, savvy, that we each are handing each other's phones and trying to figure out how to share it.
Which I'm going to do right now to Danielle so she can save it on my Facebook page.
So we would love to hear from you any sort of the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've got our kids with us. We've got the 5, Vanessa's 4, and Danielle's little guy. So they're all with us today. So be patient with us. We always like to say this is authentic. This is real life. I was watching a few things this week, and I was just so impressed with some of the other ladies that are doing a little along the same lines of what we're doing, and they're just so professional. And we've always said we're not. We're not professionals. We're just 3 ladies that love God and love each other and want to learn and grow together. So you'll see us, all these steps and all these things that we're doing, and sometimes we just kind of have some hiccups, but you know what? We love having our kids with us, and that's part of what we do, is living authentically together. We want our kids to see us talking together, talking about God and reading the Bible and learning things together. So you're going to see us with, dealing with them. They're going to be here, so be patient with us. And we'll also be speaking to people as they get on the call and start asking questions and that type of thing. So yeah, we were just saying, did you get to work or no?
I shared it to our private.
Okay, great, thank you. So we're, again, Danielle was talking about more than Enchanting, with Joe Saxton, and we've been loving the book, chapters 4 and 5. The 4th chapter is she wrote about the tale of 2 queens, Jezebel and Esther, in the Bible, the book of Esther, and it was really great. I mean, how did you feel about that chapter, about chapter 4? We've read a million times, right, about Esther and the queens.
I like the context, yeah. And I love that she gave Jezebel kind of more of a background, because you always think of her, like they say, of just like this evil queen, but you see her childhood and you're like, well, you can kind of understand where she's coming from in some of this, right? Because growing up in the way she did, I don't know how I would being just sold and just a piece of meat.
Sorry, guys. People are fighting here.
You share.
So yeah, we were talking about how Jezebel's background was really interesting, because it talked about how her father was a priest in the religion that they had there, and some of the things I had written was about he was a king and a high priest in their religion. He was a Baal. He had Ashereth, and Ashtoreth were their gods of the religion. And it was against Israel's true God,
right.
The one true God that we believe in, Yahweh. And it was interesting because it talks about how Jezebel grew up in that religion and that faith. So they had all of these, priestesses and, goddesses and that type of thing. So she is, and she's bringing in, she's marrying King Ahab of Israel, king over Israel at the time. And of course, we read all throughout the Old Testament about how Israel was always following after other gods instead of, following after Yahweh, the one true God.
Right.
And it always got them into their problems. And then there was this constant cycle of them disobeying God, falling away from God, coming back to God, and then there was, the prophets would come and say, you're gonna be punished. Yeah, you're gonna have like a lot of problems for the next 40 years if you don't come back to God. So here is Ahab again allowing his wife Jezebel to bring in all these other gods, and she brought them into the nation. So it wasn't just into their own house; she was teaching a nation to serve other gods.
Right.
So then Elijah steps on the scene, the prophet, and he says, he has this prophetic word about that there's going to be famine in the land, and the pronouncement on Israel's unfaithfulness is basically demonstrated throughout the whole story of, there's this power struggle that happens, and Elijah comes in, he says, you're going to have 3 years, and, let's see if Israel returns and comes back to God. But of course, no. Joe writes, Jezebel's nature is revealed here. She's the one in charge, not the king, because you would think the king would be like, no, because God said this, Elijah's telling me that, we need to really make sure we're following the right. No, Jezebel is in charge. And I always thought about, my mom had we have a funny story about my name. My mom loved these 2 movies. One was Jezebel, one was Camille. And she used to say, I'm going to choose one of those names for my daughter. Could you imagine? My name is Camille, thank God. But she was like, and then I think about how important a name is and how we associate the name Jezebel with what?
Yeah.
What do you think
their
of?
Child Jezebel?
I know. I was like, wow, what are you thinking about? But what do you think of when you think of the word or the name Jezebel?
Yeah.
You think of a woman that's hungry for power. You think of you think of sexuality too. That was incorrigible. You think of someone who's going to use manipulation to get what she wants. So I loved that Joe was comparing Jezebel now to Esther. I'm going to read a little bit about something that my friend Amanda Pavich, hi Amanda, I hope you watch. She writes for her blog, 5 o'clock doc. I actually put it on the Coffee Shop Conversations Facebook page, the Facebook page. So you can click on that link and read some of her stuff. But she wrote for a book called Anonymous, and it's about church planting women. And she was highlighted in it. And this is a paragraph. It says, Esther is firstly and most often described as a woman for such a time as this. What she is revered for is worthy, but how she experienced early childhood trauma speaks of how much emotional endurance it took to arrive at her at such a time as this. She was raised outside the cultural norm as an educated, outspoken Jewess. How she responded upon learning she was being pushed into the palace machine. Her beauty regimen was not like going to a relaxing day spa that we, like to go to, as many of the ancient treatments of 5th century Persia were not very good for you. She had to hold her tongue and win over servants. It took strength and maybe a little sass to make it into the palace. It took tenacity, which is often perceived as unattractive in women. I loved that. And she wrote that. That really clicked with me when you think of how women are perceived.
Yeah.
Especially, I'm sorry, but in the Christian, circles, if you're not a certain way, if you're not, quiet and subdued, maybe sometimes you're looked at as being, I don't know, manipulative, maybe, too strong. So she says, tenacity is often perceived as unattractive in a woman, but men, it's a great character trait. So it says, God himself is tenacious. God himself is tenacious. Yes, he relentlessly pursues us. It says, there is in Esther, grace of honoring those in authority above us. Clear-headed thinking about steps we must take in action. Passion without a plan is just a dream. So you talk about what she did. I mean, she was basically, so the story of Esther goes, she's a young girl, like she said, Jewess, and Queen Vashti is taken out of power because she was disobedient to the king. She was supposed to come to court. She was like, no, I'm partying with my girlfriends. Yeah. Again, another really good example of women of power that manipulate. So she's taken out of power as queen, and now they want a new queen. So what do? They go and they take all of these young women everywhere. I mean, not just in the Israelite nation. I'm sure they went to everywhere. And they took all these women, and they're basically, whittling it down to see who is going to be the queen. And did she think? I mean, I kind of wonder. Do you think that was this young girl's dream? Like every young girl's dream is, I would think back then, is to find a good husband, have children, stay in their faith. No, she's taken away from her family. She's put into this, like she said, this palace where she has to now learn all these new things. I don't think this was a dream of any young woman. And to be then married off to a man who's not within your faith, and you have to obey him. And he's a king.
Right.
He has what? Harems of women.
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to be the only one. Kind of thing. So yeah, so she like, I like that she wrote, you know, don't be known just as a dreamer, but be like Esther, a warrior. Amanda wrote, because it took a lot. I mean, there's a lot in that story where Joe actually goes into. She talks about how did she learn? Like she had to learn. It wasn't like she was at first, you know, this warrior woman who stood up for the rights of her people.
It took her some time.
It took time. I like the part where she talks about, Joe says, that when Mordecai actually comes and says to her, you need to go before the king. You need to, you know, find out, you know, if you can maybe get his ear and save our people, because you got Haman over there saying we need to get rid of the Jewish people. And he convinced the king to do that.
Yeah.
And King didn't know what was happening. He was just, you know, okay, yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
But then Mordecai's like, you need to use your favor with the king and now try to come before him. And she was like, no.
Yeah.
It wasn't even like she like immediately was like, yes, I'm going to do that.
No, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So,
that
you know,
rings true for all of us, because we're not all like always so wanting to do the right thing. I mean, it's fear. Can you imagine the fear of like going in front of your husband who hasn't want to see you in a month, and now you're gonna ask him to do this like major thing? Like, there's fear there, and it's good to see a realistic side of these women, you know, because you see someone like Deborah and she just like charges into battle, you know, and I'm like, I can't relate to that. It takes me a minute to get ready, and so so it's good to see that. We take our time.
Turn it over, baby.
And I like that she used Jezebel and Esther, because obviously the contrast is with Jezebel, although she did have power, she made a choice on how to use her power and how to wield it, how to have people basically worship her.
Yeah.
Where Esther was the other way, where she did conform herself to what was going on in the palace, but she didn't actually live that life. So she was able to overcome all that and still use her power and influence for the betterment of her people and be an empty vessel for God, so that he was able to work through her.
Yes.
Where Jezebel on the other end she was flagrant, and she just intentionally said no to that. Like Elijah even showed up and said, like, chick, slow down. And she said no. No, and then she killed some guy in the vineyard to take the vineyard over. So she used her intentionality for the wrong side, where Esther, although she did start out with no, eventually, she God softened her heart to move.
Exactly where it goes back to what am I always saying about choice?
Right.
You know, like everyone has a choice. All of us, God wants to use every one of us. He has a purpose for us. You know, he has a perfect design. And we, you know, sometimes we fight against it, you know, it's because of fear we were talking about. And I love that you said that I never even thought about that, but that you can really look at, you know, certain women like Deborah, and then you compare it to Esther, and it's like, oh, I can relate to that. You know, I never even thought about that. That's really
even like Rahab, that just comes to mind. Like she just was just like, I'm done with the situation I'm in, and I'm gonna. I mean, there's just so many women that are that kind of just are bold, and I'm want to consider myself bold, but I'm like, one toe in first, and then let me see type of thing, and let me check it out. And I love seeing the progression rather than just the crazy boldness. Also, I can relate to it.
That's really good. I love that. I love the contrast and the comparison she makes. I wrote here on page 84, it says, what Joe Saxton is trying to get at is that if we're going to be leaders and influencers for God, we need whole and healthy hearts. God is interested in our thought life, including our personality. In terms of leadership and influence, your calling is like a building, she writes. The state of your heart functions like the foundation. If it's whole and strong, then the building stands firm no matter what happens. And that leads into chapter 5, which is about, you know, self-assessment. And the name of the chapter is called Coming to a Halt, because she uses the HALT acronym.
Before we go into that, I just wanted to, after my mother passed away, I took some time to like reflect and to read some books and stuff like that. And it's all about like making your heart a little bit better and everything. So there's a book recommendation that I wanted to share with you guys. It's called A Heart Made Whole. And it talks about your heart being like a building, not like a building, but like a home, and you're like fixing it up, and you kind of have to like tear down foundations and stuff like that. And it was something that went along with this. And so if there's something that you are going on in your life that is that you're struggling with, or because it says here, like you need to have the Lord's heart in order to move forward, in order to be a queen, and to make your heart whole again. So that's the whole title of the book, A Heart Made Whole.
That's the name of the title?
Yeah, it's the title of the book, Heart Made Whole. And,
we'll put the link on, right?
Yeah.
That sounds really good. It's a good one. You read that one? Oh, I can't wait to read this one. Another book to add to my stack. So yeah, I was, I would just go, leading into that next chapter about coming to a halt is, learning like what is in your heart. That's been a big deal for me lately. I mean, it's been like that for years. Like you can't be a believer and a follower of Jesus if you're not going to examine your heart all the time. I mean, you can definitely, go along in life and be like, okay.
That's all you're going to be doing. You're going to be going along in life.
Exactly.
You're not going to be doing something amazing.
Exactly.
Like, not amazing, but you're not going to be really pursuing God wholeheartedly and do everything that
do the things that He really has for you.
Because you're not examining your heart and you're not spending time with God.
I just wanted to say hi to some people that I didn't get a chance to say hi to. Olga and Alice is on, and Patty. Hi guys, I'm so glad you're on. Olga says, I'm getting the book. She says, I haven't gotten it, but she's ordering it today. Yay! I love Olga. She's a good friend of mine. And we were talking this weekend, and just I was sharing with her some of the things that we're learning in the book. And she was like, I got to get this book. And I'm like, yes. And she's a good friend of mine because the last 5-6 years, we've seen each other grow. I've been able to speak into her life. She speaks into my life. And one of the things we were talking about was about basically your heart and trying to find out what is in your heart. And when you look at your growth over the course of time, you're like, wow, I used to be like this.
Right.
And I've come so far. But it's a journey. We always say that it's a learning process. So let me just get into what halt means. Halt is hungry, angry, and lonely and tired. That's the 4 words. It's a self-assessment. It helps you to look and discover what really is the state of your heart.
I want to know what your guys' triggers are.
Oh, let's talk about my triggers.
Which one is your most one that you default to?
Listen, I'm flawless, girls.
Yeah, okay.
I'm
I want to know
flawless.
what your triggers are. Definitely mine is tired lately.
Well, I mean, you're gonna have a baby in like a week, so yeah.
Let's hope less. That's definitely.
Vanessa's quiet.
I have 2 actually. Tired and angry.
Angry, yes.
I feel like they kind of trickle into one another. So when I'm tired, I kind of then veer to anger, or because then there's other things that are very deep, and I don't spend a lot of time on myself at all in any capacity.
Well, you have 4 kids, so I can understand that. I'm not going to give you an excuse.
No, but this has convicted me to at least take that time, because being a mom, I feel guilty like when I take an extra long shower.
Yeah.
I asked my husband, I'm like, I'm going to take a shower now. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Is that serious?
Right. Well, right. So
it better be. We need that. We need shower time, guys. I remember
But I
having
love the way the anger, like what you just said, that when you're that anger is usually a secondary emotion. So like your tiredness then stems into your anger or something. And that's it's totally true.
Yeah.
It's totally true. I mean, your anger, you don't really just well up in anger. It's because of something else that you are well up in anger.
Yeah, so hungry, let me just go
Yeah,
over
sorry.
we went ahead. We're like, what are your triggers? No, let me talk about what they actually mean. And hungry is, it says, what hidden habits do you use in an attempt to satisfy hidden hungers that you have in your life? Like, do you hunger for approval and acceptance? And when you hunger for like things like recognition, influence, and power, that's a big deal as women. The Bible talks about, like in Genesis, that the woman is going to try to usurp, a man's, authority, or, and try to rule over him. And it's like, I'm always fighting over that. That's innate human nature characteristic trait. So So Joe wrote about Jezebel using her power, violence, and sexuality to manipulate Ahab and a nation. So on page 94, it says, "Where are you tempted to use manipulation when hungry, or you for influence and power?" Because sometimes, like with you guys, when I was young, when I had kids and they were young, I was like, I know you have spoken about this, that you kind of feel like, well, this is all I have as a mom, and because it feels like it's forever, but it's not, because I'm at the later stage of that. My kids are, teenagers and older. So I remember feeling like, oh my gosh, all you do is take care of this little person, and there's nothing for me. Like, so when I was young and I had kids, my, desire for power and influence was, I hate to say it, but I started a business with Mary Kay, and I love Mary Kay.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything bad about it because it's wonderful to help women, to develop who they are, and gives people empowerment, women empowerment. But what I did was I used that because my husband had ministry. I was home with my kids.
Right.
And I was like, I got nothing to do. All I'm doing here is changing diapers. So I was like, I'm going to start a business.
Yeah.
But did I really ask God whether or not I was supposed to start the business? Kind of, because I was like, we need money. So in my mind, I was like, I'm going to do this myself, And I did. I built the business. I had like 40 women under me. I was driving for free, the free car driver. I loved it. And I enjoyed working with women. I enjoyed empowering them. I loved the products, But God kept asking me all throughout that period of time was like, is this really your focus? Is this supposed to be what you're doing? He kept saying like, and again, it wasn't anything that was a bad thing.
Right.
It was just like, I was like, it's not all there is.
Right.
There is a better thing for you that you have to maybe wait for.
Right.
So I was like, I had to look at that and say, I was hungry for something to fulfill my life at that stage of my life.
Yeah. I think that's where I am at currently right now. We've been doing like all the vlogging and doing this. It is, I love being a mother. Don't get me wrong. I'm having another baby. I love being a mother. But I don't want that to be my identity forever. Is that I'm a mother, and that is my identity. But I kind of want to walk in more. I don't want to just be a wife and a mom. I want to walk in all fullness.
Because God put that in you. He has put that in you.
And raising children is raising the next generation. There's really nothing better that you can do.
Absolutely.
But I don't know. I don't want that to consume me. I love him.
Of course you do. And you shouldn't feel bad about that because God has put, they say He's put the seeds of greatness in every one of us. And yes, I fully believe that I just raised three children that will go on to make an impact for the kingdom of God because they love God, they have the values that we have, and they're going to maintain them. I just raised a generation as far as I'm concerned. And we want to raise world changers. That's what you're doing with your kids. You're homeschooling you for. And we could see what kind of people they're going to be like. But at some point that will be over. And that's something I talked about the last week was, the stage of life I'm in is, like what is there? Is there anything more now? Because that does end. Yeah. And so it's like, it's a good thing to try to keep your identity based in who he is and knowing your self-worth in who, how he sees you. It's really important. So so that's a little bit about hungry. I wrote, people are drawn to leaders simply because they are attracted to power.
True.
Being as a minister's wife, I've always had to think about that. Do people want to be my friend because I'm his wife? Or do people really want to know who I am and get to know, what we can do together? Like, that's been a tough struggle for me too. Angry. So Holt is hungry, angry, and it says, as female leaders, we never want to appear as aggressive. Oh, remember before it was like the tenacity word, now it's aggressive. Anger is an indicator that something somewhere needs to be resolved. So if you have something, bitterness or anger in your life over whatever it could be with your husband, it could be whatever, family situations, you better look at that because that's going to color everything, how you see the world, your perspective. So it says failure to deal with anger stagnates into unforgiveness and bitterness and turns you cynical and sarcastic. I was like,
That's about right.
I feel that because I know that to be true in my life. My husband too, we always talk about our, where are you at? Like how you thinking? Like, do you have a positive mindset? And you can't have a positive mindset if you're thinking about who did you wrong, or you really can't. You have to keep on releasing that to God. So how does anger affect your capacity to lead in the position that God has for you? And how does it shape your influence?
Right.
You know, I mean, I don't know. You were talking a little bit about that, Renee. I don't know if you want to open that up a little bit, but that can of worms, because we really don't have much more time. But still, it's something that I know you're struggling with.
Mhm.
I've struggled with it. Got to the end, came back to it. You know.
Yeah.
I think everything is a daily struggle.
Yeah.
I don't think it's ever really resolved. There's always going to be triggers that are
Right.
Well, then we have our defaults. I know.
Yeah.
I didn't really learn. I never thought I was an angry person or an impatient person to the point of anger.
Yeah.
Until I had children, and then just life took its courses,
Mm-hmm.
and now I'm forced to constantly reckon with it. Like, okay, well, you are reacting in an angry way. You should scale it back. I have to be more cognizant of how I let my heart spill out.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all a matter of paying attention to it.
Yeah, being aware is like the first
yeah.
big step. When you're aware of it and you're aware of what your triggers are, then you can kind of control it. And it's something with the Holy Spirit too. It's not just something you can control. It's like, Father, please help me.
Yeah.
Like, whenever we have like issues between the two of us, if we're like in a bad mood, like we're tired, this is the last one, it comes out in a nasty,
sarcastic
comment to each other, and I'm like, we need to control that.
Gotten on that with me the past couple months. He's like,
all right, listen, I forgive you. We need to forgive you. I remember being pregnant. It was not fun, and it was not easy.
He's like, babe, you are rough to deal with.
Oh well, honey. Oh well. You got a little more time.
Yeah.
Davey, deal with it.
I'm growing you a human.
You're growing you a human. I love that. All right, so loneliness, really quick. Loneliness, Mother Teresa described loneliness as the worst kind of poverty. I love that Joe wrote that. She wondered if Esther had been lonely as well. We talked about that too, trying to, having to win over servants and things like that, when we become isolated, we're always talking about that, about community and staying in community. We have that default. I tend to just draw away and be quiet, but then when you do that, the enemy can just pick you off. He's like, "Ooh, I got her right where I want her." So loneliness is very tough, and it says the cost for female Christian leaders breaking. What is that cost of loneliness when you're trying to break into positions of leadership and influence? When you're alone, you're not networking with others. You're not allowing them to speak into your life. You're not speaking to others' lives. What kind of influence do you have?
Yeah.
So there's definitely loneliness.
I think that triggers anger again.
Right.
Because you're all alone and you think that you have to do this again. Like, I think everything goes back to anger in a lot.
It does.
Then you get
angry. Then you get angry. And then tired was on page 100. It says the writer of Proverbs notes that hope deferred makes the heart sick. Oh boy. I think that's been a real theme for my life over the course of 25 years in ministry. It's like I've always had dreams in my heart, and I know that God has given me dreams, and when you're constantly asking when, God. He's like always like a wait, you're not ready yet, it's coming. You kind of get tired sometimes of waiting, and you can become heartsick.
And sometimes you take that into your own hands. Take that into your own hands.
You said that about Mary Kay. Yeah, I got tired, man. I was like, all right, well, you're not apparently listening to me and saying, what my heart's desire is. And he's like, and I really feel like now God is working that out, and what we're doing, and creating space for us to speak into the lives of other women. Right?
Yeah.
I wrote, many of us know that even as we read the pages about empowering women for influence, our environment is a struggle. We know we'll never sometimes have a mentor. I don't know how you felt about that. We talked about that. I love mentoring you guys, and we mentor each other. It's not just me mentoring you. We learn from each other. It's really important to have someone, to mentor you as well. So it says student tiredness acts as a trigger to your hungers, your anger, and your loneliness, and it brings your life and your calling to a halt. So I love that self-examination. It's a great tool, to keep thinking about halts in your mind. Being self-aware. It's true. And she wrote, the last thing she wrote was, we want to stay alive in leadership, and we want to thrive in the opportunities that the Lord has given us. Look at the call comes to reveal what's in your hearts, but it's not an end in and of itself. If it were, we'd all just give up, because if we just look at those problems and say, it's never going to change. Oh well, of course, then you have to start walking it out and taking actionable steps towards, healing or whatever it looks like. So I wrote reflections on leadership. We are all in need of healing in some area or another. None of us are perfect. We must realize we won't get it done all at once. It's not gonna be or alone. Exactly. it has to be in community because when I open up my heart to these guys, they'll say, "Oh, that's a little negative." Danielle's really good. She's like, she thinks she's like suave. She's like, I'll say something about, "Oh, did you see this person writing all this on their blog?" And she's like, "Isn't it great?" And I'm like, "Shut it!" And I'm like, because I could be really negative like that. Well, why are they doing well? And you get that comparison. You get like a little jealous of things. Like you don't think, I don't think sometimes it's happening fast enough for me. And God's like, "Wait, just wait." And I say, so great, isn't it? So yeah, they have their ways of speaking into my life, and I have my ways. I'm really confident.
Women empowering women. Let's do it.
And she's like, she's teaching me. They're teaching me. So it's really cool. So guys, I hope you've gotten a little bit over these last 2 chapters. I'm going to go over 6 and 7 next week. Hopefully, we might have a little Axel in our arms. I'm sorry, I'm always saying his name again. A little boy in our arms. We'll edit that.
It's a lot.
Oh, sorry.
We're still teaching her technical.
I've got to learn a lot. I got a lot to learn. All right, so guys, have a great day. Love you. We'll speak to you next time. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
It's still recording.